the hall. Everyone around them immediately began to whisper. Irina immediately stepped forward and said that she had heard about the girl being late due to fatigue. Shuer said that she spent a lot of energy when she was walking with her friends, so she was tired. She noticed that recovering from the flower depended on a person's physical strength, so she couldn't use this ability. The heroine also added that during the vacation she sorted gifts for her husband. She divided things into those that the Duke would use and those that he would take with him to the north. Irina's subordinate approached her and confirmed the girl's words that she really bought a lot of things and was engaged in sorting. He also confirmed the words that before that, the girl walked around the city and shopped with her friends. Irina was amazed at her older sister's extravagance, but there was nothing she could do about it. She thanked the girl for her cooperation. The Duke and Duchess looked after Irina, who was moving farther and farther away from them. Because of their bad relationship, it might seem from the outside that the girl mixes personal feelings with state affairs. At that moment, our heroine saw the high priest, who was described in the novel as more beautiful than any woman. Cedric guessed that the forger knew something about the real stone tablets, so he ordered to find him immediately. In the novel, he was the only person on the continent who received the blessing of God. Once he came to the temple just to be given blood and food. Therefore, day after day, he prayed with all his heart to live without effort. God heard his prayers, and Cedric became high priest in no time. One day, an assistant came to him and said that it was necessary to look at the stone tablets found in the mountains and bless the wedding. The man was annoyed by the fact that the aristocrats were unable to do anything without his help and constantly distracted him. Once the man dreamed of just enjoying a carefree life, now he was forced to solve other people's affairs. He didn't understand why there had been so many reports of stone tablets lately. Having received a report that the Rocky Mountain was covered with stone tablets, Cedric had to lead a campaign of priests. On top of that, they had to verify the authenticity of the tablets, restore them, and even translate them. That is why the man went crazy from the amount of work done and just wanted to relax. Therefore, he did not want to hear anything about the fact that stone tablets began to appear in the emperor's palace. He even ordered his assistants to carry him straight to the palace while he lay down and rested. However, the moment Cedric saw the tablet with his own eyes, his thoughts changed. When the stone tablet absorbs the divine power, the symbol of the god appears on it. This was a way to distinguish a real tablet from a fake. However, if a person with mediocre strength did it, he could lose his life, so no one but him would dare to do it. However, this forger knew about the symbol of the god moreover, although in the tablet, the divine power is faint, although it is slightly different. This meant that there was a person who survived after engraved the pattern on the tablet. That was why Cedric was glad that there was an unfortunate man who would do all the work for him. This is how the man guessed that the forger knew something about the real tablets. Due to the rules of the temple, he could not tell about it, but suggested that the official announcement of the second tablet be postponed. Shuer was glad that her plan had worked and that she had caught the attention of the high priest. She was a little surprised that the high priest's explanation was different from the original novel. The Duke remarked that Cedric had never caused trouble, even though he looked a little strange. The heroine knew that fake signs for the temple were a huge insult. However, the high priest looked too relaxed, as if he was even glad about it. The girl thought to talk to Cedric, but she was distracted from this by her friends. They were worried that the girl did not feel well after a walk together. They were also worried that they could bore the girl with their stories. Shuer had just said goodbye to her friends, was about to go to Cedric, when she noticed that he was gone. At that moment, he himself approached her from behind, which frightened the girl very much. Out of fear, she accidentally pushed him, and the high priest bit his tongue. Our heroine immediately came to her senses and formally greeted her, as etiquette requires. Now it would be good for our heroine to find a topic to talk to him. Therefore, she asked permission to take a minute of time from him and recommend her a date for the wedding. Now the man understood why the girl was staring at him so much and refused her request. He began to give some advice, which confused our heroine even more. Shuer said that she had already received the consent of the bridegroom, but the high priest misunderstood her. Seeing Cedric's condition, the girl decided to leave him behind and deal with it without the help of the temple. The man was only happy about this and said that you should not blame everything on the temple, but you should live your life on your own. Because of his words, the girl realized that she could do anything to her heart. However, at that moment, his assistant appeared behind the priest and said that he could not use the halo and divine power to look more beautiful in the eyes of people. After that, the assistant introduced himself as Kyle and asked what happened. The high priest began to say that he had fallen in love with another girl, but the heroine did not agree with this. She said that she already had a lover who did not look like a priest at all and looked several hundred times better. The assistant immediately apologized for the misunderstanding and for the narcissism of his boss. At that moment, the Duke approached them, who noticed that his wife was talking to someone. Kyle immediately recognized the Grand Duke of the North and congratulated him on his recent marriage. He promised that as an apology for what happened, they would help find the best date for the wedding of Blaine and Nettree. The high priest heard the girl's name and was very surprised because he thought that she should become the successor of her family. At that moment, the company was approached by a knight who had been wounded recently and thanked Nettree for her help with the recovery. He apologized for his rudeness and thanked the girl for helping him heal. Our heroine gladly accepted the bouquet in gratitude and asked to take better care of herself in the future. After that, the knight bowed to the girl once more and went back to his business. Schuer was glad that the incident on the training field ended so well. At one point, it even seemed to her that the Duke had become a little jealous of her. A little later in the evening, the guys were in their room and were doing business. The Duke looked through the documents, and his wife walked around him and begged him to go to bed together. The man could not understand why the girl would not give up and stop wanting to see his sleeping face. Schuer apologized for accepting flowers from another man in the presence of the Duke this afternoon. She was very afraid that she could extremely upset him with this behavior. When she received the bouquet, the Duke's mood seemed strange and tense to her. Due to the forgery of the signs, the girl spent 3 whole days in the room, and on the 4th she finally went outside and was able to take a walk. She came to the training field and saw that during this time the knights had built a real throne for her and shelter from the wind and dust. First of all, the girl greeted her husband and said that she would watch him. She showed her the tent the knights had made for her and asked her to rest with her. However, it turned out to be too small and was a place where only our heroine can enter. Suddenly, the attention of the guys was attracted by a noisy crowd that was celebrating the victory of Commander Irina. The girl was the first Southerner to hold this honorable position. Even her sister was forced to admit that Irina's position wasn't just due to cunning. If the girl becomes the commander-in-chief of the Knights, then there will be no more people in the capital who support the Duke. However, she did not understand how Irina knew that the second child could also use sword abilities if there was nothing about it in the original. Irina approached the Duke and asked him what he thought of her abilities. Schuer knew that this was a trick question. With any answer, her husband would be at a disadvantage. Therefore, she decided to interrupt their conversation and handed each of those present a chamomile flower. She added that if Lady Irina was not very confident in her abilities, then she needed some time to recover. However, the girl noticed that her sister did not quite understand her words. She quickly pretended that she had some important things to do and decided to leave first. The heroine herself counted that the Duke used the sword 65 times during training, so she wanted to get 65 bouquets of flowers. After that, she asked to return the chamomile to her in order to keep the bouquet intact. After a while, the Duke returned to his training with the knights. John explained that from that day on, he no longer participated in battles, but protected the Duchess. The girl did not understand what could happen to her in the capital, where everything was safe. However, before she could finish speaking, a loud sound was heard, and something happened to her tent. John helped the girl out of danger and looked around to see what it was. Behind them, the guys saw a group of knights on horseback, all covered in blood. Captain Irina ordered her knights to capture all these people and animals alive. Schuer immediately remembered the Duke and worried about his safety. That is why the girl was distracted and did not notice how danger was rushing right at them. She looked around and saw that a huge horse was rearing up right above their heads. The Duke quickly ordered John to cover the girl's eyes with his hand and hold her there. After that, the terrible sounds of tearing flesh and sword fighting were heard. After a while, the girl opened her eyes and saw horses and people lying unconscious in front of her. The Duke used his Blaine magic to save his wife from danger. Schuer immediately noticed that Reynald's eyes were as cold and empty as the deep seabed where there was nothing. They were the same as during the punitive expeditions to the far north. When you lose all your emotions, your mind becomes so clouded that you are no longer able to distinguish good from evil. That is why the girl ordered the knight to bring all the daisies from her room to protect her husband. She needed to stop him somehow, so she headed towards the Duke. Irina stood in her way and ordered her to stop acting so recklessly. The commander insisted that the Duke ignored the order and killed everyone, which is considered a violation of the agreement by the North. However, Schuer noticed that her husband did not kill anyone. People are just unconscious. That is why the girl ran to her husband, jumping over huge cracks in the ground. At some point, she miscalculated her strength and began to fall, but the Duke picked her up in his arms. He woke up from his stupor and helped the girl stay on her feet. The man apologized to his wife for making her worry unnecessarily. Just in time, the knight returned and brought daisies from their room. At this time, Irina came over and said that as punishment for violating the order, she would report the situation to the prince. The girl added that by doing so, the Duke could destroy important evidence and put them at a disadvantage. Schuer noted that the situation was different from the original, but if things continued like this, the knights who returned alive would not last long and would die. That is why she decided to demonstrate to everyone her success in collecting daisies for 3 days. The girl turned to her sister and asked her to invite the high priest. Duke Reynald felt that strange feeling again, as if there was only one emptiness inside him. The man seemed to be in a space where there was nothing around him. The Duke did not even remember at what moment and for what reason he drew his sword. Suddenly, something bright and bright began to appear through this oppressive darkness. In the next moment, he heard a loud voice calling out to his name. The man looked up and saw that it was his own wife calling him. He saw a girl who was recklessly jumping over a very deep ditch. He did not understand at all why such a fragile woman behaved so strangely. At the last moment, the man managed to put his hands up and catch the girl, saving her from falling. After that, the surviving knights began to run around the training field and help those who suffered. The assistant reported to Irina that all these knights came from the border areas. A couple of minutes later, the chief medic and his junior assistants ran up to them. At that moment, Irina announced that the defenses in the north had been broken by the monsters. According to the original, the only victims were the knights who accompanied the temple attendants who announced the appearance of the tablets. However, this time others were also affected, as the delegation of the church stayed a little longer in the capital. The Duke carefully examined the victims and said that their wounds were too neat, and the monsters could not have inflicted such damage. While the crowd was arguing among themselves, Schuer whispered to her husband that she would distribute her healing daisies to all the victims. The Duke listened to the whispering of people around him and began to doubt what had happened. However, Schuer noted that she trusts her husband unconditionally and will always be on his side. She believed his words implicitly and was ready to support any of his decisions. After that, the girl turned to the victims and offered them daisies, which could relieve the pain for a while. The girl knew that at this rate, all the wounded would die, and the North would take full responsibility for this incident and be completely isolated from the world. Therefore, she needed to find knights who could confirm that it was not a monster attack. People and animals were still scared, so they reacted sharply when someone unknown approached them. Fortunately, John was able to calm the horse and protect his mistress from being injured. The girl could not reach the wounded soldier on horseback, so John lifted her up. Schuer was a little embarrassed to be in such a position in the arms of her subordinate. The girl only hoped that her daisies would help the wounded to hold out until the arrival of the high priest. Kyle announced that there were only 3 dead and 27 wounded knights in the incident. Immediately afterward, the high priest used his magical power and helped all the wounded to heal. Divine power surrounded him and helped all the people he passed by. Schuer was imbued with Cedric's magical powers that aided her plan. The man was very narcissistic, so he was happy when the girl praised him. As a token of gratitude for saving the knights, she handed him one of her daisies. Cedric took the flower in his hands and looked at it intently, feeling something. He looked carefully at all the knights and noticed that they were holding exactly the same flowers in their hands. The man turned to his assistant and asked if he noticed anything strange in these flowers. He had never heard before that the future heads of the Netri family had daisies blooming, because the flower of the heiress should be lantana. The subtle power that was felt in the daisy was very similar to the one that the high priest felt in the false tablets. That was why he thought that in one generation of the family, two people with the ability were born at once. The high priest thought this was a very amusing coincidence and looked forward to what it might lead to in the future.
Like this video. Hit the like button and subscribe for more videos.